Today is July 30th, 2014, and we are interviewing Kenneth Johnson at the Adams County Courthouse, Quincy, Illinois. Kenneth is 67 years old, having been born on October 22nd, 1946. My name is Tracy Allgilbers, and I'll be the interviewer. Where and when were you born?
October 22nd, 1946, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Who are or were your parents, and what were their occupations?
Father Lloyd Johnson, he worked most of his life in mills. My mother was Wilhelmina Richter. Don't know that they were ever married, so I don't think her last name was Johnson. And I don't have information on her that we can prove.
All right. Who are or were your siblings, names and genders, and did any of them serve in the military?
Only one person pops up as a sibling, and she wasn't really my sister. The family that raised me had a daughter, Dr. Judith Lincoln. We were raised as brother and sister, even though we weren't really brother and sister. She was not in the military. My father, since we mentioned his name, was Navy.
All right. What were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, I entered the service in September after graduating from high school. So I was doing part-time jobs for a summer, okay, and then joined the Air Force because the draft was coming.
All righty, thank you. In which branch of the military did you serve?
Air Force.
What was the highest rank you achieved?
They now call it sergeant. I was an E5. At the time I got it, it was Airman First Class, but there were so many of us who worked side by side with Army guys. We both had three stripes. They were called sergeants. We were called Airman First Class, so they changed it to sergeant.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
If you enlisted, why did you choose that specific branch of the military?
Interesting answer, I think. I didn't want to be in the Army or the Marines because I knew what they were doing in Vietnam, which left me the Air Force and the Navy, and I didn't want to be in the Navy because they wore bell-bottom pants.
What happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training?
Training, you're talking about basic training.
Mm-hmm.
I got there, since I went in September, I got there in the fall in Texas, which made it pretty nice. The Air Force probably had the simplest of basic trainings of the four services. They didn't do to us what the other services did, so they were nicer to us.
Do you recall your instructors, and if so, what were they like?
The two guys mainly in charge of getting us through basic training, two sergeants, looked like Marines, always spit and polished, tough but fair. And the one thing I remember out of basic training was one of the guys had to miss a week because his young baby got hold of one of Mommy's birth control pills and got really sick. So we didn't see him for a while.
Did you receive any specialized training, and if so, what?
Not in basic training. From after that, I went to tech school at Shepherd, Wichita Falls, Texas, and there learned how to be a teletype operator.
How did you adapt to military life, including the physical regimen, barracks, food, and social life?
I didn't have a problem with it. In fact, I have said to people thinking about going in the service. In the Air Force, in 4 years, I had one cold shower, and that was probably an accident because the water heater in the barracks blew up, so we didn't have hot water one day. And in 4 years, I never had a cold meal. Food was pretty good. The people, the guys that I was with at all bases were wonderful. It was wartime, and we were putting in our time and getting through it together.
What was your job/assignment?
I spent 2 different basic tours of duty. I had 777 days in Korea. It was a 13-month tour. So when I finished my first year there as a teletype operator, we also ran the telephone switchboard. I can't tell you who it was. One of the officers called me in and said, "Here, pick a place in the States you're going." And I said, "Okay, I get to go to the States. Well, what are the odds I get to go to Vietnam?" And he said, "Oh, you're going to Vietnam." So that's not a question. I said, if I spend another year here, Korea was restricted duty. Nobody had family. If I spend another year here, can I go to Vietnam? And he said, "Oh, they could never send you to Vietnam." And I said, "Okay, I want to sign that paper." So I spent 2 years as a teletype operator in Korea. When I finished that, I came back to the States and was assigned to Vandenberg Air Force Base working for NASA. I was the only military guy in the headquarters office at NASA, which is the Western Test Range for NASA. There I was responsible for teletype operations just like I was in the military, except different equipment. I was in charge of sending out messages all over the world for NASA.
All right. Wartime service, where did you serve?
I just did that. Basic training at Wichita Falls? No, that's not right. Basic training was at San Antonio. Tech school was at Wichita Falls. Then had a little over 2 years in Korea and a year and a half at Vandenberg.
Okay. If you served abroad, what are some memories you have of that experience?
It took 2 memories of, Korea was long. Korea's probably changed a lot since I was there. It was a dirty little country. I saw one clean town in Korea. The rest of them had dirt streets, dust blowing everywhere, starving children sitting in the middle of the street playing in the dirt. It was an interesting place because I'd never seen anything like it. I enjoyed the time in Korea, and I forgot what the question was that you asked me that got me into ranting and raving here.
My question was, if you served abroad, what are some memories you have of that experience?
Okay, going over, it took 2 days to fly from San Francisco to Korea. We stopped in Tokyo on the way over and picked up stewardesses who could speak Korean in case we got shot down. They could be our interpreters. So it took me 2 days to get there. We stopped in Fairbanks, Alaska, I think, on the way over. They took the luggage for 2 guys off the plane in Alaska. I was one of them. So I was 3 months without uniforms. When I got to Korea, I had the uniform I was wearing. On the way back from there, because you cross the international date line, I left Korea at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon and landed at Seattle, Tacoma on noon the same day, which I thought was interesting.
Okay. If you were on the front lines, what combat action did you witness?
I was never on the front lines.
Right.
They told us in Korea, if we were at Kimpo, we were 7 miles from the DMZ. So we were very few minutes in the event of attack, and they told the Air Force guys, get south and get out of the way, we'll take care of it. And I said, good, I could handle that.
If you were not on the front lines, what were your duties?
I was always a teletype operator.
If you saw combat, how did you feel when witnessing casualties or destruction?
Well, we saw casualties because the guys from Vietnam were shipped everywhere for R&R, and Korea was one of the places, oddly enough, that they would bring them for R&R, and there wasn't anything to do in Korea. But guys that had been in Vietnam were anxious to just go anywhere to recuperate.
Okay. What kinds of friendship and camaraderie did you form while serving, and with whom?
Probably my best friend in the Air Force was a kid named Ankney from Missouri, but had friendships with almost everybody I served with. Like I said before, we were all in it together and anxious to help each other get through it.
All right. How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Lots of letters, which had to go airmail. Interestingly enough, if it didn't go airmail, it went by boat. So people who sent us cookies by regular mail found that we got hard cookies after 3 months. And usually the drunks would come in and have cookie fights on Saturday night.
What did you do for recreation, or when were you off duty?
Until I got to Vandenberg, while I was in Korea, I was on shift work all the time. And it rotated on the shifts, where we would work evenings, days, and nights, and then have 2 days off. There was not much for recreation. I learned how to play pinochle. We played a lot of pinochle and hearts, and the poker players did a lot of that because there just was not much to do.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
No medals that I can think of. Might have right at the end picked up a good conduct medal, but I don't know that for sure. So no, I did not have medals or citations.
Okay. This next section has to do with war's end / coming home. Where were you when the war ended?
I was in, well, probably out of college by then and teaching when the war ended.
How did you return home?
I flew home because I was at Vandenberg in California.
How were you received by your family and community?
I grew up in a military background community. Everybody, all of the adults that I knew had been in the military. So when you came home in the military, you were just another one of the guys.
How did you readjust to civilian life?
I came out of the Air Force, had been married for a year while I was in the Air Force. My wife stopped college to get married to come to California. So she came back to go to school. My first semester out of the Air Force, I had a job waiting to get into college. And then just went to college. So there was no real adjustment for me because I was busy.
Okay. Have you remained in contact with or reunited with fellow veterans, and if so, who?
No. Don't know where hardly anybody would be.
Okay. Are you a member of any veterans organizations, and if so, which?
American Legion.
What have you done since separating from the military in your life?
I am a retired school teacher. I am a retired college instructor, and now I am working again as a bookkeeper in a small nonprofit organization.
Okay. And next section has to do with personal. Did you do or have something special for good luck while you were in the service?
No. Lots of people did. I didn't.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
Oh, yes. Yes, the Air Force took care of us.
What was the food like?
Food was good. My complaint, my only complaint, was being from Illinois, we never got seconds on corn. And I knew there was corn out there, and I wasn't getting it.
This next section has to do with R&R. How did you entertain yourself?
How did I entertain playing lots of cards in the evening?
All right. Were there any entertainers that came to see your units?
No. No. We almost, this is, played the guitar. I can't tell you his name. We almost had a famous guitar player come to Korea and was scheduled to bring in his group, and he was going to arrive on Saturday, and Thursday they had a blow-up, which happened frequently between the North Koreans and the South Koreans, and they decided it wasn't safe to bring him in, so we didn't get him. But most of the people were going to Vietnam. They were not coming to Korea.
What did you do when on leave?
I don't know. Well, when I was in Korea, I didn't take leave. When I came home to Vandenberg for the year and a half there, the one time I took a leave, I went home and got married.
Did you travel while you were in the service?
Very little. In Korea, I traveled around 30, 40 miles on what they call a kimchi bus. And it was cheap to go see some of the other towns. When I got back to Vandenberg, then I traveled back and forth to Illinois once or twice.
Okay. This next section has to do with discharge and post-war.
Okay.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Oh, yeah. I was supposed to get out early to start college. And one of the doctors decided he found a heart murmur on me, so I couldn't get out because I'd be able to sue the Air Force. So they kept me until another doctor decided I didn't have anything that was going to bother anybody, so he let me go. And I got back to Illinois about 24 hours too late to start college that first semester, so I went and got a job.
Where were you when the service ended?
Oh, when my service ended? Vandenberg, California.
Did the war come to an end, or had you fulfilled your military service?
I had fulfilled my 4-year military service. The war didn't come to an end for several years.
Were others discharged with you?
No. As far as I know, I was the only one that day.
What did you do in the days and weeks afterward, once you got home?
Once I got home, I got a job at GE in Bloomington, Illinois.
Okay. Did you resume a job or start a new career?
Well, it wasn't a career. I was waiting. My first great mistake in my life was getting out of the Air Force. What I did was come home and just get a job that tied me over because I believed the lie that you got to go to college or you'll never amount to anything. So I got my job to hold me over till I could start school, and then I spent 3 years in college.
Did you go back to school?
Oh yeah, GI Bill. Wouldn't have made it without it.
And what classes did you take in school?
I would love to have been a math teacher, but I figured it had been too long since I had done it, and I wasn't much of a student in high school. so I became a business teacher instead.
The next question you kind of answered, but did you use any military benefits?
Oh yeah, the GI Bill got a lot of us through.
And this section has to do with reflections. How did your military experiences affect your life?
A lot of the things that I learned in the military I can still apply. There's nothing wrong. A lot of kids today ought to be in the military and learn to grow up a little bit.
What are some life lessons you learned from military service?
Being on time, working hard, doing what you're told, and paying attention to whether it's the right thing to do, and learning when to argue and when to shut up and do what you're told.
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
I was different because I was in the Air Force. I wasn't in Vietnam. I might have a different perspective on war if I'd been in Vietnam. I think there are some times when you need to go fight, and there are some times when you ought to stay out of it. And I don't know that I learned that from being in the service, but I have those feelings now.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
There's nothing wrong with the military. It helped an awful lot of us grow up and get started in life. Because we had the GI Bill, I got a degree and a half out of the GI Bill. Because we had that, which they're trying to eliminate now, we had something else working for us. But there's nothing wrong with improving yourself and getting some skills and just getting older before you go out to face the world. And a lot of people, I think, could stand that. I know there were some people, maybe especially in Vietnam, who came in pretty good kids and turned into drunks and junkies just because of the pressure that was there to stay alive. In my mind, I don't know whether those people would have done that anyway if they hadn't gone to Vietnam. That would be a thing somebody could debate for a long time.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview, and if so, what?
Don't know what it would be.
And just in general, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I think it's a good thing, and wish you lots of success finding people to talk to.
All right. Thank you.